Welcome back to episode 33 of the Balance Improved podcast, where we read a book a week and we try to break down the complex ideas in that book and turn them into actionable steps for progress. My name is Chris Pound.
My name is Landon Eller.
And the book that we decided to read this week was Start With No, a book on negotiation by Jim Camp. This book had a lot of great insights in it, and in order for us to be able to fully make all this content digestible for you guys, we decided to split this episode into two. And so we'll split it up, the key takeaways that we had, 5 by 5.
So getting right into it, who is Jim Camp? Jim Camp is a top tier negotiation coach whose clients include training FBI hostage negotiators, Fortune 500 executives, many entrepreneurs, and more. He also had some pretty cool professional experiences, including being an Air Force pilot and being a recruiter for Woody Hayes, who was a football coach at Ohio State.
Yeah, Start With No flips the script on traditional negotiation advice. It's not about finding yes or even finding middle ground. It's about creating a process where you are constantly in control of the situation, allowing the other side to feel comfortable with saying no, a common misconception in a lot of negotiation books, other than obviously Jim Camp's. This allows you to strip away the emotional baggage, and it allows for real decisions to actually be made. Camp argues that obsession with compromise and agreement often lead to weak outcomes and lost leverage.
So why is this book important? Why are we reading a book on negotiation? It's crazy to think about, but negotiation happens so much in our daily lives. Anything from salary talks to group projects to client deals, even deciding what you want to eat with your significant other or your kids.
Yeah, which we have neither one, and that's why we end up reading a book a week. But
yeah, very true. This book arms you with tools to stay grounded, to ask the right questions, and make strong decisions without falling into the trap of being overly agreeable.
Yeah, before we dive into the main themes, we need to address the central argument of Start With No. Jim Camp believes that a win-win mindset will set you up to lose.
So Jim Camp says the win-win mindset doesn't work. Why is this? Because we've all heard, like, you want a win-win agreement countless times growing up, and it really sounds great. Like, how can you not want everybody to win in a negotiation? Because both sides walk away happy. But Camp argues that this idea leads to weak outcomes because it's built on compromise, not control.
Yeah, very seldomly do you ever actually experience a win-win situation. I think we're all kind of taken back by the idea that, okay, this is great for me and this is great for him. This must be great together. But in reality, it hardly ever works out like that. And so Camp kind of goes on to explain that compromise sounds collaborative, but negotiation, it usually means giving up value just to make the other side feel good, or kind of saving your adversary or saving the other person on the other end of the negotiation. When you're focused on being agreeable or keeping the peace, you're not negotiating, you're actually just hoping for a good outcome.
So we wanted to provide an example to try to convey it in as simple terms as possible. So let's say Chris and I are getting a pizza together.
Yeah.
And we're splitting a single 6-sliced pizza.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really hungry, so I want 4 slices, and Chris just 8, so
I only want 2.
But to be fair and to go along with the concept of win-win, we ended up splitting it 3 pieces to 3 pieces.
Yes.
And as a result, I'm still hungry because I didn't get my extra piece. Chris overate, so now he's cranky.
And now I feel kind of bloated and unmotivated and upset at myself for overeating when I'm trying to eat in a calorie deficit in the first place. But, you know, it was a win-win and it was fair to both of us. That's not how we should go about negotiation, because I had my needs at 2 slices and he had his needs at 4 slices. So, you know, you do have to make compromises at some point, but being able to, you know, have a conversation and negotiate with the other party will allow people to realize, okay, maybe I don't need 3 slices in the first place, and maybe he doesn't need 4 slices in the first place. You never know until you start to ask questions.
Yeah, so that's the main point of that win-win challenge that Camp provides. It's just a lazy middle ground where no one's actual needs get met, just like in bad negotiations where compromise replaces clarity. So the key takeaway here is win-win often turn into win-lose because it invites emotional decision making. Start With No is about rejecting that, so you stay calm, are able to ask better questions, and make stronger decisions.
Yeah, so if win-win thinking weakens your position by inviting compromise, what does what does give you the control back into your position. And according to Jim Camp, it starts with eliminating something that almost all of us bring to the table in the first place: neediness.
Because the second you feel like you need the deal, you stop negotiating and start begging, and that puts you at a position that's very weak in terms of negotiating.
Never be a beggar. It looks bad for you, it looks bad for the adversary, it looks bad for your company.
So now the greatest weakness in negotiation is the dangers of neediness. And it's just the quickest way to lose control in a negotiation. The moment you feel like you need the deal or you need to make this happen, you've already given the other side all the power in the negotiation.
Yeah, neediness clouds your judgment and drives emotional decisions, which is something that we want to stay away from when it comes to negotiation. Think about it. We don't really need anything other than shelter, clothing, food, water, fresh air to breathe. So you not getting this deal really doesn't affect you very much, because either way, you're going to be able to sleep tonight and you're going to be able to wake up tomorrow morning.
So ultimately, camp is like, don't show need at all. Be able to show want, because want is more control and focus. It's something that you're working towards. It's something that you're striving for, and you don't necessarily need.
Yeah, so now that we've stripped away neediness and you've taken back your power, what's next? It's not about dominating the conversation. It's actually about doing the opposite. Make the other person feel comfortable. And that's where the Columbo Effect really comes into play here.
So first of all, like, who is Columbo? What is the Columbo Effect? Columbo is a detective in a fictional TV series called Columbo, where he had a habit of seeming forgetful to make him seem more human. So for example, he would go up to a suspect and start to ask them questions. Then he would seemingly be like, okay, that wraps up all my questions, and begin to walk away. The suspect or the client would shut the door, and then he would have to go back and knock on the door, because he made it seem like he forgot to ask a very important question. And when the suspect or client realized this, it made him seem more human because he forgot to ask that important question.
Yeah, he made a mistake. So within the Columbo Effect, you have to realize that you need to let the other person be in control of the situation in their point of view. Now this makes them drop their guard and become more open to whatever you're trying to negotiate in the first place.
Yeah, so only one person can feel okay in a negotiation, and it has to be the person sitting across the table from you. Acting slightly unsure, just like Columbo did with his suspects or clients that he was asking questions to, can make them open up and reveal more. Just take, for example, when you are talking with someone and they're like, oh, can I borrow a pen because mine ran out of ink? It immediately drops your barriers because they seem more human, so you can relate to them more, thus probably sharing more information.
Exactly. Once you've lowered their guard and you make them feel more okay, it's time to move the conversation forward. But here's the twist. Instead of pushing for a yes, Camp wants you to rethink about it and actually look for a no. Give the opportunity for the person you're negotiating with the chance to say no in the first place, because odds are, if they're going to say no right off the bat, you're not going to be able to persuade them one way or another. And so it's all about using your time and energy effectively in that aspect, because like I said before, you're not going to be able to really sway someone in one way or another.
Yeah, like Chris said, yes and maybe, they don't have really any emphasis behind them. Like when someone says maybe to you, you kind of get your expectations and assumptions up, which we'll touch on later, and this can lead to getting your emotions flared up. Like, for example, if he says maybe, like, I'm pretty positive that this deal will happen,
I get excited about it, right? And excitement can actually lead to your demise.
Because of the emotions, and then it becomes emotionally decision making, and you just go down a rabbit hole. So, but on the other hand, when you say no, it really forces people to think, reflect, and reveal what really matters to them. You can focus on getting to the right challenges and problems in the negotiation to get to that end result quicker. So to try to convey this in simple terms, we have an analogy. Take working on a puzzle, for example, but half the pieces you can't find why they don't fit. You keep trying to force them in because maybe they fit, like you're really close, you just can't find that answer, and you want to make progress, but it's just frustrating. And that's like getting a maybe or a yes back, because if you think, yes, this puzzle piece has to fit here, you're not gonna be focused on the actual completing the puzzle part. The moment you say, no, this piece doesn't fit, you free yourself to focus on the puzzle pieces that can actually fit and lead you towards completing the puzzle.
Yeah, you can always go back and, you know, kind of reevaluate the puzzles of the pieces of the puzzle that don't necessarily have a spot within the actual puzzle yet. But in negotiation, no, it clears space, right? It gives the opportunity for really better negotiation in that aspect. It removes false options and helps both sides see what is actually real, where the puzzle pieces actually fit into place.
Yeah. So saying no might feel like a full stop, but really it's the start of smart decision making. And to make solid decisions, you need to have a solid foundation. And we've talked about this many times throughout other books. This comes from a solid mission and purpose, because if you don't know what you stand for, you'll chase whatever comes your way and it will confuse your decision making process.
With that being said, every negotiation should be guided by a mission and purpose, not just simply a goal. So what does it take to have a valid mission and purpose?
3 things. First is this mission and purpose must be set in the adversary's world. Take a second to think about it. Your mission and purpose is always about the other person. As soon as it becomes I focus or money or power focus, you're going to lose track and it's not going to lead to you completing the deal. So setting it in that adversary's world allows all of them to see clearly the features and benefits that you and your product or service have to offer them. Secondly, it must be concise. It's easier for yourself to visualize, and when you're conveying your mission and purpose to your adversary, it's easy for them to get that picture too, to see the value that you bring to them. Lastly, your mission and purpose must always be written down. Why? Because this usually increases commitment when you write things down rather than it just being a verbal thought, and it triggers deep memory and coding, so it's really locked deep into your memory.
Yeah, and just like Start With Why or the TB12 method or It Can't Hurt Me, every one of those books and a majority of the books that we've read have talked about having a good mission and a purpose. And what this really does is help you just clarify your decision-making process, where you want to be, where you want to end up. Every negotiation is effective decision-making. The foundation of a decision-making is a valid mission and a purpose to guide it through along the process. All you have to decide is if the opportunity at hand aligns with your mission and purpose in the first place. And if it doesn't, then that opportunity probably isn't as good as what you thought it was.
Then you just say no.
Yeah.
You start with no, and then that brings you on to focus on the problems that really matter.
Yeah. Once you've defined your actual mission, the next challenge is letting go of control. Not over yourself, but actually over the outcome. This is about shifting your focus from results to behavior, because that is the only true way that you can manage the outcome or manage the what you have control over in that aspect.
Yeah, so like Chris said, stop trying to control the outcome. You can't control the end results. You can only control your behavior and your effort that is put forth in preparing for that end result.
Yeah, and the best example that I have found so far of any of the books that we've read was by Jason Kalipa's As Many Reps as Possible, when he was told to draw 2 big circles, one labeled things I can control and things I can't control. List everything you can control in one box or one circle and all the things that you can't control in the other circle. After you read the things that you have absolutely no control over, simply go back through and erase them, because they don't matter. All they're going to do is take your time and your attention and your energy away from the things that you can control, because when you're constantly thinking about things that you have absolutely no influence over, you're just wasting your time.
Yeah, it's focusing on the outcomes makes you extremely anxious and reactive to a whole bunch of situations. So you cannot control these outcomes, you can only influence them. And this comes from how you prepare, the questions you ask, and how you carry yourself. And an analogy that he used in the book is like during a golf match. Like if you're focused on making par or being
bogey, if you're a bogey golfer, you're substantially better than 99% of other golfers, including myself. But like a golf swing, you need to focus on one swing at a time, because if you get over zealous about, okay, well, I'm 20 over par right now. First off, who cares, right? It's not like you're going to be in the PGA, but focus on the little things one at a time in order to achieve your ultimate goal at the end.
I mean, even the professional athletes, like the NBA playoffs right now, like when it comes down to like the Knicks game that just happened where they beat the Pistons to advance. Jalen Brunson, when he hit that 3-pointer with 4 seconds left, he wasn't focused on that end result of winning the game. He was focused on doing each and every individual step right. So he had the mechanics down to make the shot, which ultimately led to winning the game. But it first came through focusing on the mechanics.
Now, unfortunately, in that analogy, the Knicks will be destroyed by my Cleveland Cavaliers in the next series. But shout out to Jalen Brunson.
And then they will eventually be destroyed by either the Celtics or the Thunder to finish out the NBA playoffs.
Cavs all the way, baby. Cavs all the way.
We'll find out.
Mark my words. Today is May 4th. Currently 2:57 p.m. Chris Pound, says that the Cleveland Cavaliers will be the 2025 NBA champions.
How much you willing to put down on that?
I'll come back with you on that answer. So that pretty much wraps up our first initial takeaways of the first 5 points that we had.
So to go over high level, brief summary of what we talked about so far. First, we went into why the win-win mindset doesn't work, because ultimately there's no way that you can get an effective compromise where every party is both extremely happy and there isn't value left on the table.
And the second section that we kind of covered was the danger of neediness. Neediness is the quickest way to lose control of the negotiation, which will ultimately make you lose the negotiation.
Next is the Columbo Effect, or the secret of being not okay. You as a negotiator should be more human, show that you're fallible, and this will allow the other person to feel okay or comfortable in the situation and allow them to drop their barriers.
Next was start with no. No is the most powerful word in a negotiation. It's honest, it moves the things forward. It gives your adversary an opportunity to say no in the first place, when most of the time people don't start with questions that you can be answered with no, because most of the time people are scared of rejection or failure in that aspect.
Yeah, then we got into success. That success comes from having that foundation, that mission and purpose, because once you have that in place, you're able to effectively make decisions, and this will lead to an end result quicker.
And lastly, you have to be able to control the things you can't control and forget about things that you have no effect over. Literally erase that, forget about that circle, and just simply focus on the things that you can and will be able to control. With that being said, we'd like to just kind of tease you a little bit about the concepts that we will be introducing on the next episode. First being the fuels of the camp system. Best negotiators, they don't talk, they ask better questions.
Then we'll delve into creating a blank slate, being able to silence your mind.
Yeah, and then third thing here was know their pain and then be able to paint their pain. All decisions start with a problem, and your job is to get on the other side of it clearly.
Then figure out how to play the shell game and understand who the real decision makers are in a negotiation.
And then lastly, have an agenda and work it. Negotiations, they can feel chaotic, and agenda gives you a game plan to follow. Now, talking about last week's implementation from The Anatomy of a Swipe by Ahmad
Siddiqui.
I had that, but our implementation was going to be go through the 10K of Stripe. But unfortunately, early in the week, Landon informed me that it is not a publicly traded company, and so finding that type of information is not available in the first place. So we kind of had to pivot, and we decided to do one on
Marquetta. So that's still in the works, but I have a couple other ones following up on the previous weeks. So first was from 2 weeks ago where we read 3 weeks ago where we read Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. He presents a list of challenges throughout each chapter, and a lot of them surrounded like journaling aspects. So I was able to complete all of those, and I recommend if you didn't listen to that episode, go check it out, because being able to look back on what you accomplished, what you overcame is pretty cool, and it gives you some cookies in the cookie jar or some good post-its for the accountability mirror. Next, for 2 weeks ago, when we read Think Again by Adam Grant, I said to do a little rethinking time. And this is just think again about a commonly held belief. So I did 2 types. One was personal, and the other I was just like, it was kind of random. So it was, you ever wonder why people say carrots can help you see better? So like you better
Night
use
vision.
night vision.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is that even true?
Is it?
Oh, that's what I dug into this week. So carrots contain beta carotene, which is a pigment found in red, yellow, orange fruits and vegetables.
Not red 40 or yellow 5, but actual colors of foods. Continue.
So that beta carotene is a part of a group called carotenoids, which are plant-based antioxidants. And then when you eat carrots, your body then converts that beta carotene into vitamin A. And then that vitamin A is needed for a couple different things. Making the pigment in your eye that helps you see in low light. So like Chris referred to as night vision. So there is some truth.
So
to
what
that.
we're trying to say, the more carrots you eat, the better you're going to be able to see in the dark. How cool would that be?
But it's like a gas tank. Like once you fill it up so much, like all the extra stuff isn't really going to matter.
There's a limit there, but expanding on kind of last week's ideas, I also wanted to go through Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express and see how everything is connected. And I had a major revelation last Thursday, and you will not see this in the news, and this might be controversial, but you would notice, or at least I noticed, that around 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, 3 out of the 4 major credit card networks all went down at the same exact time. MasterCard, Visa, and Discover, they all went down on the same exact time. Now, thinking more on that, okay, it makes sense that MasterCard and Visa could go down considering that they are open network systems. But this has no rhyme or reason why Discover would go down considering that they are a closed network system. They run on their own networks. So why did 3 out of the 4 major credit card systems go down at the exact same time? Well, you couldn't even pull money out of an ATM. You couldn't use it for transactions. Your money was essentially locked up. And so that goes back into my firm believing that M1 money or currency is much more valuable than M2 money or numbers that are simply on your phone account or your bank account. Those numbers are simply, as much as this is going to hurt you, simply not really that real in the first place, right? They're not tangible. Okay, when you think about how much M1 is in circulation, how much currency is in circulation, it's roughly 7 trillion. Let me ask you this, how much M2 is in circulation?
No idea.
35 trillion. There is 5 times the amount of M2 money as there is M1 money. So with that being said, I encourage you to maybe start building up a little bit of a cash reserve just in case, something big does happen. I'm not saying it will, but I think there's always an opportunity or a potential opportunity for something like this to actually happen on a much, much larger scale.
And I have not done my proper research, so I cannot provide an opinion, but this is all opinion based, and we are just kind of going into...
I'm not saying that I'm right, but Think Again by Adam Grant, I did take a step back and I thought about it as a scientist rather than a preacher, prosecutor, or a politic. I was searching for answers rather than just going with my initial belief or my initial assumption of the matter.
Yeah, we're filling in those blanks with assumptions. Awesome. So lastly, we'll hit on our favorite quotes here from this book. Mine was a quote from Vince Lombardi where he said, "Winning isn't everything, but the will to prepare to win is everything." Just like how we talked about in the episode. You can't control the end results, but what you do as a result of your preparation in terms of whether it be in sports, how much time you're putting in the gym, how much time you're studying film, or your career, how much back-end research are you doing to make sure that you go into negotiations so you're fully equipped, etc. And I just think that's a good quote and motto for everyday life.
Yeah, the more you put into something, the more you're going to get out of something. But moving on to my quote, take responsibility for the bad decision, learn from it, and embrace the failure and soldier on without fear, because you are only one decision away from getting back on track, right? Don't let one bad decision affect your entire day. I mean, we have 24 hours in a day. You do 24 times 60. I don't know what that number is, but I'm sure it's a huge number, right? Just realize that one little setback in your day is not going to truly affect or truly change the rest of your day. realize that, move on. Forget about fear. You should have no fear, right? Think about the 100 men versus one gorilla. It's obvious, right? 100 men are definitely going to be able to take on the one gorilla, right? Have you seen that?
I haven't done my research, so I cannot.
All I'm saying is if you have 100 grown men taking on one silverback gorilla, 100 grown men are going to take that sucker down 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah, but just to touch back on your quote here, like what's the next best step after you've made a bad decision?
Learn from it, right? Embrace it.
I was gonna say make a decision that's even better than the one before. So it's just how quickly you can iterate and get to that next decision.
Iterate. Shout out to Mr. Crown. So that pretty much wraps up our first 5 key takeaways from Start With No by Jim Camp. Next week we'll be diving into the next 5 that we previously mentioned. Thanks for checking us out on this week's episode. Don't forget to look us up on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. So see you next week.